I warned you.
Emily, the king demanded.
He lost everything in one night. Not to war, not to flood, not to the cruelty of an enemy. He lost it to a crack in a wall and the eye he pressed against it. His wife had made him strong. She had made him wealthy. She had filled pots that were empty when he went to sleep and overflowing when he woke. She had asked for one thing in return. Do not enter the kitchen while the hearth is lit. Do not watch me. Do not seek to understand what you cannot yet hold. He promised, and then he broke his promise. By morning she was gone. The pots were dust. The cowries had vanished. The land was seized. And Obinna, the man who had been given a miracle and called it a secret, sat alone at a dry stream, whispering to water that would never come back. This is the story of what he lost, and more importantly, why settle in? My besties, pull your stool close, because this is not simply a story. This is a mirror. Once, in the ancient lands of Umuis, where the Iroko trees grew so tall, they seemed to hold up the sky, and where the red earth was as warm as a grandmother's palm, there lived a man called Obinna. He was not a chief, not a merchant draped in foreign cloth. He was a palm wine tapper, a man whose mornings began before the roosters opened their eyes, who climbed trees with bare feet and rope, who coaxed sap from the heart of the palm and carried it down the hill in clay pots balanced on shoulders that had known only honest work. The sun had kissed his skin, the colour of polished mahogany. His sandals were worn through at the heel. His hut was the kind of place the wind entered without knocking. But here is what the village knew about Obinna above all else. This man had a soft heart in a world that rewarded hard ones. When old Mama Chidinma could not afford wine to pour for the ancestors at the New Yam Festival, it was Obinna who left a full calabash at her door before dawn. When the young boys of Umuis came running with empty cups, he tipped his last drops into their mouths and walked home with nothing but the sound of their laughter. He was the kind of man the earth does not make enough of, and yet, because the universe has a sense of irony that would make a masquerade weep, Obinna was hungry, not the kind of hunger between meals, the deep, gnawing kind that takes up residence in your ribs and refuses to leave. He ate what was left after giving, which was often very little, and he slept on a mat that had seen better decades. It was on one such evening, the sky bruising purple as the sun limped toward the horizon, that he saw her. She was crumpled beside the dry stream, the one the village called Oguta Noanye. She was folded into herself like a cloth carelessly dropped, her chest rising and falling like a flame in heavy wind. Her wrapper was clean despite the dust. Her face was still. Obinna ran. He had one thing left in his possession that day, one small flask of water, saved for the walk home. Without a moment of hesitation, he uncorked it and brought it to her lips. She drank, her eyes opened. And when they did, Obinna felt the world tilt beneath him. My besties, before we go further, I need a moment with you. If you love stories like this, African tales of wonder, of wisdom, of love that costs something, then this channel is your home. Hit that like button right now, subscribe so you never miss a story, and ring that notification bell because the best ones always come when you least expect them. Now back to Obinna and to the woman he was about to marry. Her name was Emily. She had no family she could name, no village she claimed, no elder to negotiate a bride price, with no mother to wail with joy at her departure. She told him simply, alone in the way that rivers are alone, present, purposeful, and belonging entirely to themselves. They were married before the next new moon, but before the last prayer was said and the last wine was poured, Emily took Obinna's hands in both of hers and spoke to him with a kind of quietness that carries more weight than shouting. "I will be your wife," she said, "and I will provide for us. You will never know hunger again. But I must cook alone. At the stroke of midnight I will enter the kitchen. You must never enter that room while the hearth is lit. You must never watch me, never follow me, never seek to understand what you are eating from." Obinna smiled. He thought it was a woman's quirk. "And if I do?" he asked, half laughing. Emily did not smile. "The pot will run dry," she said, "and I must return to the silent waters." He promised, because she had eyes like river stones, smooth and deep and ancient, and because a starving man, when offered a feast, does not ask too many questions about the kitchen. What followed was a season unlike anything Umuis had seen in living memory. It began with the smell, a warmth that crept from the kitchen in the dead hours of the night, a fragrance so layered it seemed to tell a story of its own. Iguzi soup that carried the memory of every harvest, over aku that tasted like it had been made from the first palm nut that ever fell from the first tree. Stockfish and crayfish ground, so fine the flavour dissolved on your tongue like a prayer, and beneath all of it, something that could not be named, a quality that sat below the taste, the way music sits beneath a conversation, present but not quite heard. Obinna would wake to find the pots full, and the food did something to him. Within 2 weeks, his shoulders broadened. The hollows under his cheekbones filled. His eyes, dull with tiredness for years, began to shine. He climbed his trees faster. The sap came more willingly. He lifted things other men could not. The elders of Umuis began to look at him sideways, the way you look at a fire that is burning in the rain. And then came the cowries. The first time he thought he was imagining it. He finished his morning soup and was washing the bowl when something clinked against the clay. He reached in. There, at the bottom, where the last drops of broth still swirled, lay 3 cowrie shells, white, clean, heavy in the way only real money is heavy. The next morning, 5. The morning after that, 7. It was not dramatic wealth, not immediately. It was the steady accumulation of a river, not a flood, but it was real and it was consistent. Outside his door, however, Umuis was tightening its belt. The rains had been ungenerous. The yam mounds were producing half of what they should. Mothers were stretching their ogiri to make it last. Children who once ran past Obinna's hut without a second glance now stopped and lifted their noses at his doorway, because the smell of his kitchen spilled into the street like music from a celebration. And in those hungry weeks it was both a comfort and a cruelty. This is where Okon enters the story. I want you to pay attention when I describe him, because you have met Okon before. Not in Umuis perhaps, but in your own compound, in your own life, wearing different clothes and a different name. Okon had been Obinna's friend since boyhood, or what passed for friendship when one person does most of the giving and the other does most of the taking. He was a man of large words and small effort, always with a scheme, always disappearing when the bill came. He was not entirely evil, the most dangerous people never are. He was simply corroded by the bitterness of a man who believes he deserves more than the world has chosen to give him. Obinna's transformation ate at Okon, the way termites eat a wooden post. He began visiting more often, sitting in the compound with the casual ease of a man who had nowhere else to be. Eyes moving around the hut, cataloguing, the new mat, the extra wrapper, the full pot on the ledge, smiling with his mouth, calculating with his eyes. "Brother," he said one afternoon, "this wife of yours, she cooks at midnight, you say. Alone? What is she hiding? What kind of wife refuses the light?" Obinna put down his spoon. "Okon, I am only asking. I am only saying, what if this strength of yours is borrowed and the lender comes to collect?" The words found their way in, the way cold air finds its way through cracks, not by breaking anything, just by being persistent. Then the king sent for him. Obiajele, the third, was a man who regarded other people's blessings as his personal business. When word reached the palace that a palm wine tapper had grown inexplicably strong, wealthy and healthy, while the rest of the village starved, the king's interest was piqued the way a hawk's interest is piqued by a chicken that wanders too close to the open sky. "They say your wife has a spice," the king said, seated on his carved stool with the patient certainty of a man who expected answers. "Something she puts in your food that is not pepper, not crayfish, not anything in any market in this land. I want that recipe. Bring it to my palace kitchen before the next full moon." He paused. "Or I will take the land your hut stands on as compensation for your uselessness to this kingdom." Obinna returned home with the king's words sitting on his chest like a stone. That evening, Okon found him by the gate, palm wine already in hand, already speaking before he had fully sat down. "You see now, the king will take everything, Obinna, all because you are afraid to open one door. One look, just one. What is the worst that can happen?" Obinna drank he should not have, but he drank because fear and wine together have dismantled greater men than him. The night he broke, the village was quiet. The moon wore a thin ring of cloud like a wrapper pulled halfway up. He told himself he was only going to stand near the door. He told himself he was only going to listen. He told himself, as all people tell themselves when they are about to do the thing they should not, that it would not count if he was careful. He crept across the compound in bare feet, the dew cold between his toes. He found the kitchen's narrow window. He pressed his eye to the gap, and what he saw should have broken him open with wonder. Emily stood at the centre of the kitchen, and she was weeping, but these were not tears of pain. They fell from her eyes in silence, one by one, and where each tear fell into the pot, there was a soft, soundless flash, and from each tear bloomed yam, fish, cocoyam, things he had no name for, rising from the water like offerings from somewhere beneath the earth. Her hands were at her sides. She needed no fire. She needed no oil, no pestle, no mortar. She was the ingredient. And her legs, from the waist down, there was mist, not fog, not shadow. Mist clean and silver, the way a river looks at dawn when the cold of the water and the warmth of the air wrestle each other above the surface. She was not a woman who cooked food. She was a being of water, weeping food into existence out of love, for a man who, at that precise moment, had his eye pressed against a crack in her wall. Obinna's hand shook. He had not meant to. He would tell himself that for the rest of his life. The lamp slipped from his fingers. It struck the ground. The light flared. Emily turned. For one terrible suspended moment, their eyes met through the gap. Her tears stopped. The silver glow flickered. The pot gave one shuddering sound, like a great sigh, and cracked cleanly down the middle. The food ran into the earth, and it was gone. He burst into the kitchen. Emily was still there, still standing, still whole, still looking at him with those deep and ancient eyes. But something had already begun to leave her. You could see it. The silver fading at the edges, like a fire that has been told it is not needed. She did not scream. She did not rage. That was the thing that would haunt him most. She spoke softly, the way water speaks when it is about to pull from the shore. "I gave you my tears, Obinna, every meal you ate, every coin at the bottom of your bowl. Every morning you woke with strength you had not earned by sleeping. All of it was my tears. I cried it into being because I chose to love you, and that love had no limit." She looked at him. But love without trust is a cup with a crack in it. It can hold water for a while. It cannot hold it forever. The belly was full, but the heart was empty of trust. "Emily," he said. "I," Okon said. The king demanded. "Yes," she said gently. "There is always an Okon. There is always a king. There is always a reason." She looked at him one final moment. And in that look was the last thing she would ever give him, not food, not carries, not strength, but the full weight of what he had thrown away, pressed against his chest, so that he would carry it every day for the rest of his life. I was not hiding from you. I was protecting what I was made of, but what I am made of cannot survive being seen by eyes that do not believe. She dissolved then. There is no other word for it. She became water, not violently, not with sound, just gradually, the way morning mist becomes invisible as the sun climbs, until she was simply a pool spreading across the clay floor, seeping between the cracks, draining into the earth. Going back to wherever she had come from, the pot lay in 2 pieces. The kitchen smelled of nothing, and Obinna discovered that the smell of nothing is the worst smell in the world. By morning, the hut had reverted to what it was before her. The second mat, gone, the extra wrappers, gone, the cowries, gone, the strength left his body some time in the night, like a departing guest who did not say goodbye. The king seized the land with the swift mercilessness of power that no longer needs a reason. And Okon, who had whispered and goaded and filled the cup Obinna drank from, came to the compound that afternoon with the composure of a man who had been waiting for an opening. He spoke of debts, of loans, of land as collateral. He was brisk about it. He smiled only once, briefly, when he thought Obinna was not looking. The smile of a man who has been planning something for a long time and is finally watching the plan unfold. Obinna had nothing left to contest with. No food, no strength, no cowries, no wife, no land. He left with the clothes on his back and the knowledge in his chest. Of the 2 burdens, the knowledge was heavier by far. He begged Inumuese for a season, then moved between villages. He was given food sometimes and not given it others. He ate without tasting, slept without resting, lived without the presence that makes a man recognizable as himself. He tried to explain it sometimes. When he had drunk enough that the story felt less like shame and more like a wound that could be shown, he would tell people about Emily. Most did not believe him, or they believed the shape of it, but not the holiness of what he had lost. They thought he had been tricked by a witch. They thought he had been foolish. Only Obinna knew the full truth of it, and that knowing was the longest punishment. You will find him if you go looking at the dry stream, the one called Oguta and Wanyain, the one where he first poured his last water into the lips of a woman who had come from somewhere beneath the skin of the world. He sits there in the amber hours of the late afternoon, when the light settles and the dust quiets and the stream bed, dry as it has always been, lies open and empty in the earth. He whispers to water that is not there. He does not know what he expects. He is past expecting. He simply sits because the last place he was fully himself was here, and the last person who saw him completely was her, and there is nowhere else in all the world that feels like it might bring her back. She will not come back, and that, my besties, is the truth of it. Some gifts, the real ones, the sacred ones, come once, in one season, to one set of hands. And if those hands cannot hold them without needing to peel them open and examine the roots, the gift will return to where it came from, and the hands will be left with only the memory of how it smelled before the lamp fell. Remember this when provision comes to you in a form you do not understand. Remember this when love asks you to trust rather than to see. Not everything that sustains you needs to be explained to you. True provision requires no explanation, only gratitude, only trust, only the willingness to sit with the miracle without cracking it open to see where the light comes from. Now, I turn to you, my besties. Have you ever broken something sacred because someone else convinced you to doubt it? Have you ever been an Obinna, or worse, have you ever been an Okun? Tell me in the comments. This fire is meant for all of us, and if this story moved something in you, if you felt Obinna's hunger or Emily's grief, then share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to the channel so these ancient voices find you every week. The elders say, a story told is a seed planted. Let this one grow